Welcome everyone to this webinar, African Perspective, Building a Sustainable Future. Really exciting to do this webinar. My name is Marloes Heining and I'll be your facilitator for today from the Rcsa. So who are we? We are the Rcsa, Regenerative Collaborative of South Africa. We are a non-profit organization focused on transforming our built environment into a regenerative one. We promote strategies and approaches that bring regenerative design and construction to life. We work collectively, as the name suggests, to inspire, educate, and create awareness and contextualize regenerative built environment approaches to the South African continent. We make an effort to showcase local projects, local people, and local companies that are aligned with our goal, which is creating a regenerative future. So if you have projects or you know of somebody that should be featured on one of these webinars, please reach out to us. Really great green building projects or other sustainable projects or farming projects or whatever it is, reach out. We can always use content. If you haven't done so, please visit our YouTube channel. All our previous webinars are hosted and recorded there. So if you need, we won't give you CPD points for it, but the content is still there and we're building up a really nice database of all these webinars and really great and good content. And if you're there, please hit the subscribe button so that we know you're following us. We had some good performance on our socials this month. You can find us on Eventbrite, which is our registration platform, or LinkedIn, or on YouTube. And we've had some good increases in the last month. Thank you for that. That really helps us. We don't have a sponsor for this webinar, but if you know somebody that has money lying around and that wants to sponsor one of these webinars, that would be really great. Sponsorship is not expensive at all. We just need to cover our cost from a CPD validation point of view. So it's really not much, and every little bit helps very much. So if you know somebody or you want to make a donation, let us know. But today we're talking African perspectives, and we're going to talk about building a sustainable future, and we're going to hear from experts in several African countries what is happening in their country. I gave them a pretty open brief, so they all going to do their own thing, and we're going to listen to what they have to say. So some of them will talk about the country, some of them will present a project. We will see what's going to happen. And then, so they're all going to have 10 minutes. And then after that, we leave quite a bit of time for questions and answers, and you can interrogate them, what's happening in their countries. So looking forward to hear from them. So first up, we have Nadine. Nadine is an architect with a master's degree in energy efficiency and sustainable building from the Technical University of Munich. Since August 2023, she has been coordinating the Green Building Council of Namibia, where she is supporting the promotion of sustainable building practices and engages with stakeholders across the country. Her professional experience includes several years in architectural offices in Germany, working on projects from early design stages through to implementation. And I'm going to introduce all the speakers first before I'm going to hand over to them so that you know what's coming. And after Nadine, we have Cyril from Ghana. He is the founder of the Ghana Green Building Summit and is a passionate advocate for sustainable development in Africa. A chartered banker and a certified project manager, he brings a strong background in marketing, communications, and strategic growth. Cyril has contributed to key policy initiatives, including the IFC Edge program review and the Ghana Green Building Code, and is also active in philanthropy through a small charity supporting health and education for underprivileged children. And after Cyril, we have Kagiso from Botswana. She's an experienced green building and sustainability consultant with over 5 years of experience in the industry, specializing in sustainable design, construction, and building operations. She holds a master's degree in property studies and an honors in construction management from the University of Cape Town. She's an accredited professional with the Green Building Council of South Africa, and she became an EDGE expert in 2020 and is also an EDGE auditor. And then after Kagiso, our last speaker is Felix Holland. He's an architect who has lived and worked in Uganda since 2004. After completing his architectural studies in Hamburg, he founded Studio FH Architects in 2013 and later became the co-founder of Local Works, a multidisciplinary collaborative focused on green construction. His work spans award-winning projects in the social, educational, cultural, and tourism sectors, and he's currently leading efforts on eco-prefab, a sustainable prefabricated timber and lime school building system. That sounds very interesting. So I'm going to hand over to the first speaker, Nadine.
Thank you for the introduction and also for the invitation. Okay, so thank you also for the possibility to talk about green building in Namibia. I'm the coordinator of the Green Building Council of Namibia, and the Green Building Council is a non-governmental organization and is one of over 75 members of the World Green Building Council. Why do we need to build sustainable? So that is a map of Namibia, and there you see the vegetation condition index, and that's just an example here from Namibia. And you see the vegetation condition index from May 2020 until May 2025. The brown color is a severe condition of the vegetation, and the green is, or the dark green is excellent. That are maps from end of May. And normally beginning of May is the beginning of dry season. So the rainy season, so the main rain season is in January or February. Then we also have rain in March, April, and then beginning of May is dry season. And there you see that, for example, this year we had a really good rainy season. So last year, that is that map over here, there we really had a severe drought. Also the years 2020, 2021, and 2023 were not the best ones. 2022 were okay. And these shifts remind us how vulnerable Namibia is as a largely arid country, and why resilience and sustainability must be central for future planning. Incentives and policies we have here in Namibia. So one is the NDC, the Nationally Determined Contributions. That's kind of a pathway to a sustainable future in alignment with the Paris Agreement. And that one also includes measures for the building sector. However, there are no mandatory green building regulations yet, but the NDCs are currently being revised, and that's offering an important opportunity to strengthen the role of building environment. We also see that the interest is growing among private companies and professionals, resulting in an increased demand, and organizations like us support the awareness through education and advocacy. Drivers of the green building demand are several ones, so it's not just one driver. It's a combination of developers and clients that are showing increased interest, supported by international companies. Also, certification bodies help to raise awareness, and financial institutions are also beginning to include sustainability criteria in lending and offer green loans. And in my view, they have the potential to become one of the main drivers of the change. The challenges we have here is a lack of mandatory regulations, as I mentioned before, but also a lack of financial incentives such as tax benefits. Then we also have higher upfront costs, what is normal for an earlier stage of green building, but projects face higher costs due to limited market demand. But in Namibia, a country with a small population of around 3 million people, scaling up green construction remains difficult. This makes it harder to show the long-term value of green buildings, especially of how they save money in the operational phase. We also have green financing gaps, not the lack of green finance, but many developers and clients are not familiar with green finance options or don't know how to access them. And then, of course, there's the ongoing need for capacity building. We have 3 different certifications here in Namibia. So the 2 big ones are Green Star and Edge. Green Star is a comprehensive rating system that covers 10 categories. You can also choose a slightly smaller Green Star opportunity. So that's called Energy and Water Performance, where you just have a look at the 2 areas of energy and water. Then we also have Edge. Edge is a certification system from the IFC that focuses on resource efficiency across energy, water, and materials. The last one is Net Zero, and that's a certification for projects aiming for full neutrality in areas like carbon, water, waste, and ecology. So we also have a few Green Star rated buildings in Namibia. Here you can see the 3 bank buildings that have reached the Green Star rating for new build buildings. But I also want to highlight another building, and that's the HRDC, the Habitat Research and Development Center, also in Windhoek. And that's a great example that shows that sustainable building doesn't require formal certification. The center focuses on research, innovation, and practical solutions for affordable housing in Namibia. The building itself showcases climate-adapted architecture, the use of local materials, and features for energy and water efficiency. For example, here you see different reused materials like bottles, cans, wood, and here those aluminium sheds. And that project has a high potential for knowledge transfer and affordable, sustainable construction in the Namibian context. The role and activities of the Green Building Council of Namibia are education by workshop and events. Also capacity building, we offer training programs. We work closely together with World Green Building Council and the African Regional Network. That's the network from all African GBCs. And we also work together with public and private sector and research institutions. The future outlook is for Namibia that we hope to have mandatory sustainability standards soon. Also ongoing capacity building and a big range of local sustainable materials. And that green is not the exception, but the new standards. It would be great to have sustainability over all sectors. So to have environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Thank you.
Great, thank you. There was a nice overview of what's happening in Namibia. I love that you first showed the 3 banks that got certification, and then a really nice alternative building that is green in its own way or sustainable in its own way. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be certified to be classified as a sustainable building. Kagiso, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, go for it. Great. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank Marlies for inviting us all here. My name is Kagiso, and I'm from Botswana and based in Botswana. Became a green building consultant a few years ago. And yeah, it's been a journey of growth and discovery in our little country. So I'll just give an overview of what I'll talk about. So I'm going to share about what's happening in Botswana. And I'll just start with the economic overview and how it's influencing the industry as a whole, and that's how that is filtering into green buildings and so on. And then basically talk about who's leading this market and talk about the challenges and the opportunities in the industry. And then I'll tell you about a few green building certifications that we have in the country. And yeah, and then I think that will give you a good picture. So Botswana is a very small country with 2 million people, or just over 2 million people. And our economy is largely driven by diamonds. And recently, we've had a bit of a decline in global demand for diamonds, and we don't have much in terms of diversification. So this has had a huge impact on the construction industry. So at the moment, there aren't a lot of new developments, which then means that, you know, the few developments that we have that are in the pipeline that were earmarked for green building certification, some of them are reducing cost by cutting off the green building certification. So it's sort of like the first thing to get rid of when doing your value engineering exercise, largely because, you know, it's not a regulatory requirement, and also there aren't a lot of incentives. And then when I chat through some of the challenges, you understand why even the business case isn't very strong in our context. So because there aren't a lot of new developments going on, a lot of investors are refurbishing the existing building stock to add value and so on. And this creates opportunity for existing building certifications. So that is an opportunity that comes with an inherent challenge in our context, where your existing building certifications lean a lot on water and energy efficiency. And in Botswana, our coal sort of generated electricity, or electricity generated from coal, is subsidized and therefore very cheap. And so when you have very cheap power, it's very hard to, you know, to drive the business case of energy efficiency in buildings. And so that is how the business case is undermined. And I'm not too sure about water, but I'd like to think that it's also subsidized to some degree. But it's, you know, the commercial space, which is where we see a lot of green building certifications, is not water intensive. And so, you know, water savings aren't as meaningful, perhaps, as energy savings would be in those spaces. So while existing building certifications are a good opportunity, they come with these challenges. And then some of the other challenges that I have experienced, people are interested in what a green building has to offer to the operations of a property portfolio. In fact, a lot of the interest comes from funds, pension funds or insurance funds that invest in buildings and have large portfolios. They are interested in what they have to offer. However, depending on the green rating tool, certification costs to them seem like it's a lot. And sometimes it's because some will perceive it as a label, you know, and they think, well, that's a lot of money to pay for a label, where they don't really appreciate the business case for reasons I've just mentioned. And then there's not a lot of government support in this regard from a regulatory perspective. We don't have energy performance certificates yet. We don't do energy audits that are sort of legislative. And when the ESG wave was taking off, there was a bit of kind of an opening for the building space. However, that's kind of quietened down because everybody's just thinking about cost more than anything else. And then in terms of what's been happening, the drivers for the space, we've got the Green Building Council that's pushing the advocacy side of things, and they've just hosted the Africa I can't remember, Tetteh, I think is here, the Africa Green Buildings Council or Council's conference, which I was not able to attend. So I think that was really good exposure in our context, awareness raising and advocacy. And they are largely driven by the private sector, developers who believe that it's the right thing to do. And then they're also driven by demand from international sort of tenants who come into the country and insist on occupying buildings that are green. Example of that being an organization like GIZ from Germany, who moved from one building to another, and both buildings were owned by the same landlord, and they preferred to move to the other because it was a green building. So it's usually the international market that's driving that as well. And then in terms of opportunities and or going forward, things that I think would encourage traction in the industry is I've interacted with the mining sector who actually have an existing building certification for one of their buildings with Green Star. And so they're very much interested, but the green building certifications are very limited because they don't reach too far into their mining operations. And so I think for us as an industry to really think about how we can have a deeper reach into various kind of sector operations that operate within the sort of built environment infrastructure beyond just, your typical office building or your typical house and so on, but just think about it from an infrastructure point of view and what type of sectors operate and how we can reach into their specific operations. So they're very keen for things like that. Hopefully the mining sector will start to take off. And then in terms of green building certifications that we have in the country, it's mainly Green Star in new buildings. So the existing building certification I mentioned with one of the mines or mining buildings, that's the only one I know of from Green Star point of view. Then we've got new buildings that I think we've got 4 offices that are certified. And then we've got 1 industrial building that's certified with EDGE. And yeah, so we've got 1 more that's coming up and a few others that have kind of been cancelled because of the economic situation in the country. We don't have leads or others yet, but we will get there. And I think another opportunity for us is we've experienced instances where people say, but to avoid certification costs, can we just design and build according to these standards or criterion and not get certification, which is great, but they want some form of recognition. And so I think if locally we work towards some sort of local rating, system that will make it affordable for locals, because currently we are now using international tools. I think that would be a great opportunity for our country. So yeah, that's it on Botswana. I hope it shed some light. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kagiso. We'll have a discussion on the cost later on. It seems like that's definitely one of the biggest barriers in Botswana, and still in South Africa as well. So we can dive a little bit in that in our discussion. Cool. Let me hand over to Felix.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Felix Holland. I'm an architect based in Uganda, and started together with some partners a design and build collaborative called Local Works. I've sort of interpreted the topic of the CPD slightly different. I'm going to just show you some practice examples of green construction from Uganda, but of course I can also share with you a little bit of our experience or the situation of green construction in Uganda. Maybe as a very short summary, there isn't much happening. Certainly very, very little in the certification space. hardly any buildings get certified, very little demand for it, and really apart from local works, very few other players in the segment of regenerative construction. This is our group. We are what's sort of special about us is that we are multidisciplinary, architects, engineers, cost consultants, and builders all under one roof. We're not building all projects that we are designing, we're building some of them. But those that we are building together are particularly special in that sense that the boundaries between design and building are somewhat blurred. The builders are being pulled into the design process and the designers into the construction process. I'm going to share with you just 4 little examples of work that we have done, starting with an arts center right here in Kampala called 32 Degrees East. We did this in a collaboration. We collaborate quite a lot. This is a collaboration with an English architectural practice called New Makers Bureau, who did the conceptual design, and then we then took over the technical design development, the engineering, and the construction. This is quite an interesting, complex courtyard development that houses studios and a gallery for artists, an office, a cafe, and it was really conceptualized sort of as you could say, a hyper-local type of construction with maximum of the material directly mined on site in the form of earth for the walls. Obviously, the entire building, I say obviously, but the entire building is passively ventilated. For some of you who live in different parts of Africa, this is possible here in Uganda. We have a very moderate climate, we have no winter, we're right on the equator, not particularly hot either. So a passive design is perfectly possible for the entire year if you follow certain basic rules. Maybe that's one of the reasons why certification, the international certificates are not really sensible here, because our operational energy is actually extremely low anyway. And most of the energy considerations should actually be going into the embodied energy. One of the beauties of design and build is that we build mock-ups during the design process. This is an example of this particular project that we built sort of towards the end of the design phase. We had a lot of ideas in terms of different textures and different materials and how they come together in a very complex roof geometry. So one of the beauties of design and build is that we can do this during the design. And then lots of, really the whole building is all around texture. As you can see, we are using rammed earth, we are using compressed earth blocks at high level, and we're using local stone in the foundation and in the plinths. And really, the entire project was developed as a very playful adaptation of different textures. Uganda has a lot of clay, and so there's a rich history of fired clay bricks as well, which you can see on the columns utilizing fired clay tiles, and then the roof is a timber shingle roof made of eucalyptus. Lots more textures that you can see here. The building is very heavy in its nature. That's of course partially to do with the rammed earth, but then it is also really intentional in the sense that this is a building that is trying to really create a space in which local artists can thrive, and local artists in Uganda are in a situation where they do need that space and that sort of protection. It's not a very easy, an easy place to be a free artist. The second project that I want to show you takes us in a different corner of Uganda to Bidi, a refugee camp. This is also a project we did in a collaboration, this time with an English practice called Hassel. And again, we built this ourselves, and right in the middle of a refugee camp called Bidi with 250,000 refugees, mostly from Southern Sudan. And here, everything about this building is around water, because water is the big issue in Bidi. So you can sort of see in this little perspective that the entire building is actually designed as a funnel, an elliptical shape, and then there's an open amphitheater in the middle. This is a music and arts center. 50% of the people in BDBD are below 15. There's a lot of creative talent. So the people building this or developing this project wanted to create this space for creativity and entrepreneurial training. So there's a recording studio built into this building, as well as a teaching space. You can see in the longitudinal section how the entire building is designed as a water catchment system with a central open oculus through which we collect water, which is then led into a 200,000 liter water tank that is located outside of the building. The very complex roof geometry was achieved in a prefabricated steel system, whereas then the entire walling around is made out of compressed earth blocks that we hand press on site using the material excavated on site to create the platform for the building. This is sort of a very interesting coming together of prefabrication, planning, you could say high tech, and then low tech local construction. These are some images of the water catchment in the center. Kids are playing there. And then, yeah, very simple materials, fair-faced compressed earth blocks, metal sheets for windows and doors, lots of passive ventilation in a generally quite hot climate. And you can see how the entire amphitheater can be opened at the back to create additional seating in the surrounds of the building. This is the recording studio that has an interesting element around the acoustic treatment of the building, using a so-called Helmholtz resonator in form of a earthen cavity wall that is filled with vermiculite. These are kids performing during a recording session. Moving to tourism, just to show you something in Timber as well. This was a lodge that we did right on the banks of Lake Victoria in a beautiful forested location. And this is not the building. This is just sort of an inspirational image. We were really trying to create little forest cabins. And we used here as an inspiration, the idea, sort of the Japanese way of charring timber. It makes a lot of sense in a forest setting as a very efficient form of insect protection. And we use these very, very simple and cheap eucalyptus offcuts as our primary material for the building. And we combine that with stone and with lime plaster, which is something that we generally use a lot in our projects. Some impressions of the main building, very simple sort of cottage style that, you know, allows visitors to experience the forest as much as a lake. And lastly, I want to show you something that we are working on currently, which was also mentioned in the intro, which is an attempt at showing or making the point for scalability within the regenerative design realm. These are prefabricated school buildings. East Africa has a huge challenge around the absence or the lack of schools. Uganda alone is lacking about 8,000 schools. And that is related to this spectacular population pyramid, almost second to none globally. Uganda has a huge population growth, and you can see here that currently we are in a situation where about 1.6 million children don't go to school, and this group is only growing in the coming years. And this is more or less also a situation in the neighboring countries. And at the same time, the country is actually in a situation of overproduction of timber, and basically a complete absence of demand. And this is, of course, something that needs to be changed. Eucalyptus and pine is available, not necessarily sustainably planted, but partially sustainably planted. And this proposal of ours, the eco-prefab proposal, is really geared at trying to put these two issues together and create a very simple building typology that is entirely prefabricated, that is based on timber and lime plaster again. So here we are not actually proposing to expose the structural timber within the walls, but rather to encase it in lime plaster. The walls are very simple, sort of framed panels, prefabricated. And then, as you can see in the second image, these are blocks that we are making out of sawdust and lime, pressed together, put into these walls, which are then plastered on both sides with lime plaster. All timber is treated with borax and boric acid, and all timber is FSC certified, sustainably sourced timber. These are some buildings that we have finished in this technology. We started with teacher housing, which is also a very, where there's also a very big demand for. And I think this image sort of shows you the concept of actually building wooden buildings that actually appear as masonry buildings. This is very important, not only because the plaster helps preserving the treatment and is also a very beneficial for fire treatment. It also really helps in a region where timber is not a known or accepted construction material. The interesting news about this is that these buildings are very carbon efficient, because they are largely based on local regenerative materials. So they have, compared to conventional rural classroom construction, a reduced CO2 footprint of 75%. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Awesome. I don't think you need certifications in your country. Like, these buildings are just beautiful and super sustainable, right?
Yeah, it's sort of common sense certification.
Yeah, which is actually something we need more of in South Africa, because they've completely lost the common sense when it comes to using local materials and local, just common sense design from a passive point of view. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for showing and sharing. Okay, I'm gonna share for Cyril.
Thank you. Like I was saying earlier, if you visited Accra or Ghana today, you see a glut of real estate developments. However, the question is, in all these developments, what's the awareness and the uptake for sustainable buildings or green buildings in particular? The uptake is a bit low, and I'll share some data along the way. But like I said, I'll walk through the journey, look at the past, where we are now, and also the future prospects. Okay, so there's a misconception here that green building technologies or sustainable building measures are a foreign concept, but we've always built green and sustainable, as you can see from the image, right in the villages. They were building with natural materials, or the earth, and it wasn't until I got a bit deeper into sustainable buildings or green buildings that I realized, and I look back that, yeah, when we do go to the villages back then, the buildings, when you stepped in, they were really, really, really cool. So clearly the heat gain wasn't as much as some of the properties here in Accra. So we've always built green, apart from the materials, even some of the overhangs, the sun shading devices that were used back in the day, clearly point to the fact that we've always built green. This is the Larabanga mosques in northern Ghana, also built with earth, but clearly has some foreign or Islamic influences, and it's been there for ages. It's been there forever. So this is just to also give you another window into what's pertained in the past. So this is from Ashanti side of town, or the Asantis. This is how they were building with emphasis on the courtyard, which promoted community amongst those who were living within the particular household. This is the International Trade Fair Center. You can see the emphasis on natural lighting and ventilation as well. I'm showing all these pictures just to show that the different facets of our life, whether live, work, and play, we've always built green, even from the past. So, yeah, this shows a lot of sun shading devices. This is also from the past, all in a bit to reduce the heat gain. Some of the measures, energy efficiency measures, went way back. You can still skip to the next. This is the Kwame University campus. Just to also show you and provide a window of what was in the past. And now I want to bring you to the present. Basically, just highlight what's going on in the general real estate market, and then hone in on the green building market, and show a few of the iconic buildings and some of the rating systems that are being used here. I mean, I think what pertains here in Ghana is pretty much what pertains globally already. We all know that buildings account for about 40 to 45%, in this particular case, 43% of the total energy used. There are about 1.3 million homes in terms of the housing deficit. And it's estimated that 70% of population living in urban areas would will be living in the urban areas by 2050. So clearly there is an opportunity for new builds properties to incorporate or embed the green building measures. Ghana's nationally determined contributions and the NDCs cover about 19 areas, and there are about 47 adaptation and mitigation programs of action. And then Ghana also aims to implement 34 mitigation measures of that to achieve an absolute emission reduction of 64 million tons of CO2 avoided by 2030. Like I said, the market is very much a nascent one, and adoption is slow, but it's picking up. And in the next few slides, I'll show some of the trends and the new occurrences on the Ghanaian markets. Yes. So in terms of what's driving there might be a slow uptake, but it's growing, and what's driving it is that a few policies that have been put in place as well. The Ghana Building Code has been revised to incorporate green building measures, specifically energy efficiency. Glad to say that I was part of that committee a few years back as well. The size of the market, like I keep saying, is still very small. And if you're going to look at buildings that have been certified green, I think data from Edge, which is currently the leading rating system, because it's fairly affordable compared to the other ones. You'd have about 1 to 2% of all new builds being certified or incorporating green building measures. And then if we refer to the developers in particular, I don't think you have more than 20% of them looking to incorporate green. And basically, it's a question of finance. The concept or the perception out there is that green buildings or sustainable buildings are really nice to have. It's a luxury. So unless it reflects in financial savings, you wouldn't really get the attention. It's always a hard sell here. But it's changing, because in the last five to 6 years, some of the developers have realized that it could be another route to also assess funding and also market their properties. So they are going for the IFC Edge certification. And so far, as at the last report from IFC, about 0.03 million square meters that have been certified green. That's the current state of the market, yes. Rating standards and certifications. I mentioned that EDGE is very strong here. Green Star, SA also has a couple certifications done here. In terms of finance, there's no strong funding or finance schemes that are pushing for the adoption of green buildings or even energy efficiency projects. But a few of the banks have just specific products to push energy efficiency by way of offering energy efficiency loans. But with respects to green mortgages, not yet so far. I'm trying to stand my mind. Yes, I don't think, even though I know personally, and I'm working with a few of them working on rolling out green mortgages. In terms of education and advocacy, I think my organization or my platform, which is the Ghana Green Building Summit, has clearly been the lead advocate here, pushing this awareness creation and thought leadership engagements so far. Yeah, this is just to provide a window into the rating systems and how it's looking so far. EDGE clearly in the lead, with some developments also LEED certified as well. These are some of the major ones. Then there's the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association are also trying to introduce an indigenous rating scale. They call it a green building rating system. So that's just a snapshot of what some of the rating tools are so far. Just to provide a pictorial sense of some of the iconic green buildings that have been certified here. This is the One Airport Square, and this is Green Star certified in the airport area. This is a LEED certified hospital. It's called the Greater Accra Regional Hospital. It's one of the big hospitals here in Accra, and it's LEED certified. Can you skip? Some of the banks have also certified their head office. We have here Carl Bank and then Access Bank, which I'm proud to say I was the EDGE expert on for Access Bank and got that certified. We'll look at other developments. This is the Lahaku housing project. This is in the northern part of Ghana. And this is just an example of what private public partnerships can also achieve. This was done in partnership with Real, is a UK company, and Afre Group, and it was developed for the Tamale Cooperative, 100 units, and then at the time it was done, I think it sold for a very reasonable amount, but basically used earth and the local materials, and it goes to show that once you put your mind to it, you can always achieve green affordable housing. This is Sandbox Beach Club, basically built with earth. So this is just also an example of what can be achieved with alternative building material. This is a nearly zero energy building, also in Accra. It was a project put together by the Energy Commission here in Ghana, in partnership with the GIZ and us, and designed by Tetteh and Associates. It's solar powered, as you can clearly see, has a lot of sun shading devices. So it's able to support its energy needs to the extent that it even supplies some to the national grid through net metering. So this is also one of the flagship developments here in Accra. This is just a quick SWOT analysis and some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the Ghana green building market. But I think at the tail end, I'll speak a bit more on some of the opportunities. To be able to drive the uptake of green buildings, there's a lot that government can do by way of policies. So we're looking at tax breaks here, grants or subsidies. Some of the assemblies have permit fees reduced to make it easier for some of the developers or some private vendors or builders to be able to take their permits because they've incorporated cheaper permits because they've incorporated green building measures. And then also by way of public advocacy, we can increase the awareness while government also does its part. So to the future, we're trying to look into the crystal ball here to see how the future will look like. Clearly, the demand for green buildings is expected to increase because of the drive or the push by the government to use policy to incentivize the uptake of green buildings. And then we are in 2025, but it was estimated that I think way back 3 years ago that there'll be a 20% increase in the floor space by 2025 in terms of office, warehouse, and hotels and other subsectors of increase in adoption in green buildings. Technological advancements as well. I mentioned strengthening government regulations that will push it. A few here. The Ghana Energy Transition and Investment Plan, which aims for net zero by 2060. Funding is always a fuel for such developments or green building projects. So definitely financing is key, and the Ghana Green Finance Taxonomy is really one of the key strategic frameworks that will push it. There's also going to be increased alternative material use in terms of earth. There's a lot of buildings now springing up with earth, and as well as bamboo. Shipping containers are very interesting. It's really growing, the use of shipping containers here. Waste plastic that's being converted into building blocks, as well as mushroom and hemp are some of the alternative materials that are being used down here in Ghana. And also there's going to be a focus on occupant health and well-being, especially in the offices and some of the commercial developments that have taken up green building certification are very much aware of this and are using this to draw tenants in, to draw some support and funding for some of the projects. So this is also going to be key as well going into the future. So this, I think, will be it and summarizes my presentation.
Great. Thank you. I think give a round of applause for everybody that presented. That would be great. Yes, I'm going to pronounce your name completely wrong. Chinedam, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
No, you pronounced it correctly. Thank you.
Oh, did I?
You did.
Awesome.
Now, my question is to Cyril. Cyril, please, when you presented the opportunities, I didn't quite understand. Opportunities for who? Your SWOT analysis, which would show the strengths, the way I understand it, the strengths of green building initiatives, the weaknesses, the threats and the opportunities. how were those opportunities? Opportunities for who? On whose side, please?
Sure. So the opportunities are to all the key actors within the ecosystem, being policymakers, being investors, and then developers as well. So that's the group that I meant the opportunities were for.
Permit me to just complete, please, just a small follow-up, please, right?
Sure.
Okay, it's fine. I'll try and be in the space where you are. I'm not quite getting that yet, because the way I was expecting to hear is, if you are adopting the green building approach, this is the other thing that it can yield for you, besides the environmental protection and preservation of resources for the future. That's how I would have seen it, which is what it looks like when you say, like incentives, reduced tariffs from the government side. If those are there, then those are opportunities for the person doing the project, but those are not opportunities for the authorities. That is one. But one question I have is, we always talk about the use of earth, rammed earth and all of that. I wonder, if we go that way, all of us, are we ultimately going to dig up all the ground beneath us? So I keep wondering whether that is really sustainable. And thank you. I think I'll leave it here. Thank you very much, Cyril.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you? Which country are you from?
I am a Nigerian. I'm speaking
Nigeria.
from Cape Town. From Cape Town.
Ah, okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Welcome.
You want to respond, Cyril, or Felix? You want to respond to the earth question?
Yeah, I'll defer to Felix. Yeah.
Cool.
I'd love to respond, because that is a concern that I do not have. We have recently, actually, that project that I showed first, the 32 degrees, we were actually all shocked how little material we required to build walls. You know, if you take it in terms of sort of percentage terms, the actual volume of material that is in a wall is actually very tiny. So, you know, we excavated, I think, maybe a 3-meter diameter hole, and maybe it was 3 meter deep or so. And then we had a lot of rubble and other material that we basically just backfilled it with. And we built an entire art center with it. So, you know, you should also not forget that you mix earth with other materials. In our case, for instance, a lot of sand, because we tend to have very clay-rich soil. So, no, I mean, I don't know now exactly in which surrounding you are talking. I'm sure every site is different, but overall, that should not worry us too much.
Great.
What I was going to suggest is, can we together, as part of that strategy, just inside the strategy package, include the filling of what we dig out? You know, as part of, you know, it must be part of the whole delivery process. Take out and put
I agree.
that. Otherwise, we keep creating ditches here and there and there. I'm being optimistic and saying maybe we would full swing, everybody adopt, move that way, because it's sustainable. Let's just say that. Now, in that theoretical situation, then we'll be digging up everywhere. You understand? So it's a legit
question. It's a legit question.
But
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Great, thank you for your question. Any other questions? Okay, I'll have a question. And Nadine, you started off saying that Namibia is looking into building codes or some kind of guidelines around mandatory guidelines around green buildings. I know, Cyril, in Ghana, they have the green building code, or they have a building code, and a part of that is green building related. How is the implementation going of that?
Is it to me first or Nadine?
Yeah, go for it. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's there, but there's always a gap. There's always a gap between what's on the books and the law and the implementation. So I think there would need to be a more strong. There needs to be a more strong will to be able to enforce what's on the book. So it's always a question of enforcement. I mean, it's there, and you're required to take a permit, and it's at a reduced what you call it. There's a discount there, but once you are able to meet minimal standards, then you are able to take the permit. So it's there, but it's not. I don't think it's a strong incentive. If you, it's very minimal. I would have to check exactly what the discount translates into cedis or dollars, but it's not a strong incentive if you go green. So there has to be stronger incentives for me for it to be able to work.
Yeah, I think the enforcement is really important, because even in South Africa we have minimum energy efficiency standards, but which are implemented, but that's only minimum. So that only brings you a little bit up, and we're actually looking for a lot more pioneering stuff happening if we want to meet any of our climate commitments.
But I also think that incentives,
Yes.
Financial benefits would help, to raise the number of green buildings, definitely.
Yeah.
But we don't have it at the moment in Namibia, and also don't have regulations. So
I think anything from government would just help and support the cause. There's a question in the chat from Jesse from Uganda. What does a localized green rating for sub-Saharan Africa look like? How can it be simplified for people at grassroots level, like in informal urban settlements? I think that's a very good question. Does any of the panel wants to have a go at it? Otherwise, I can have a go at it.
You can first go, but I have some thought on that.
No, you share your thoughts.
I sort of mentioned that already, and I guess that's where Jesse's question comes from, that certainly in the East African setting, the international certification systems are not really helpful, because they are overly focusing on the operational energy and the creation of a building envelope that is fully sealed and closed, and then they're basically rating the U value. In East Africa, the vast majority of buildings are passively ventilated, and therefore we need a completely different type of certification. And in my opinion, it should focus mostly on embodied energy. In other words, the energy that's going into the materials that you're using to build these things. And then it should be a system that assesses the extent to which climate smart design principles have been implemented. In other words, the building orientation, the correct facade treatment, the reflectivity of materials, the amount of passive ventilation. And these are difficult things because they're not as easy quantifiable as a U value. So not like that I have the answer, but I think I would at least know the problem and where to start from.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can also add, I agree with exactly what Felix is saying. On the certification side, the Green Building Council of South Africa does offer the Green Star rating in other African countries, and then you have to develop a local context report to make it contextualized for those countries. But like it's not going to touch on the grassroots developments that you're probably looking at. What I also always want to stress is, you don't necessarily always have to get certification for something, for doing good and for developing a great development. I think in a lot of cases, like Felix's designs, it just speaks for itself from a sustainability point of view. And it always annoys me that we have to certify things that are the right things to do. Why can we not penalize those people that do all these crazy, ugly, energy-intensive buildings? They should be penalized, and instead of us having to put money into getting certification for something that's good. I also quickly wanted to go and discuss the cost. Kagiso, you mentioned in Botswana, the cost is a really big thing. Do you think there's a different way of looking at it? Because like when I would work on projects in Africa, for us, because certain regulations in Botswana, like for example, that you have to collect your rainwater, you might not have a connection to a sewer system, or that infrastructure is not in place. You're doing a lot of these things already and talking about certification, and again, to get these points in the certification system. Where do you think the cost factor comes in? Is it people's awareness that we need to start educating, or is it people just thinking there's a cost increase, or is there actually a cost increase?
Okay, so I think there are two parts to it. The first where I've seen that reaction a lot is with existing building certifications. Because, you know, on that level, you're not really making major modifications to the building itself. If you're using Green Star, you're looking more at the operations. And if you're using Edge, you're hoping that after you've modeled your building, you know, it falls very close to the minimum requirements. So in that case, there isn't really that much of a cost, you know, from a pre-assessment point of view in making the building comply, or I don't know, meet the standard. But then the minute you give them the certification fees, particularly for Green Star, it's like, you know, there's just that like, okay, we can't proceed. And I don't know if it's necessarily the amount that's the issue, or if it's just a matter of we have to pay to just get that recognition, you know. In terms of new buildings, that one is a combination of the certification fees, because remember the design at the moment, the design and as-built, if you do both, it's double. Which can almost come up to nearly $500,000. So when a project is trying to save money and you shave off 400,000 pula, 300,000 pula, that's something for the QS. So then at that point, the project probably wouldn't really have done the exercise of calculating the green building premium. You know, so they wouldn't really know what the actual cost of going green in the design at that decision-making stage would be, because, you know, that goes as you develop the strategy. And in that, they're able to target certain credits that don't cost a lot. So they feel like they have some level of control at that level. But where it's kind of prescriptive, you're going to part with 400,000 pula for, sorry, I might be exaggerating, 300, 400, I can't remember, for design, and then for asphalt.
Depending on the size.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot, but when you know that you're just paying for the certification, that much for the certification over and above what you're doing, it's a bit of a barrier here.
Yeah, okay. All right, we're running out of time, unfortunately. So can I just maybe ask each of you to just make a closing statement, however you want? What do you think we need more of in order to create a more regenerative future? Cyril, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think that the awareness creation and education is very critical in doing all of these things, because like I mentioned earlier, to a lot of people this almost sounds and feels like a foreign concept, but it's not. And once they see that it might incur them a little bit more cost, because in their minds they are thinking of add-ons, solar, and a few other measures. But then even from the design alone, I mean, a green building from the design alone, you let in enough daylighting, you're able to do your cross ventilation well. A few tweaks here and there to the design alone can make a building green, and also educate people to know that the upfront cost of a building, which is usually about 20% of the entire life cycle cost, it doesn't compare much to the operations management cost, which forms 80% of the life cycle cost. And that eventually, if you are able to embed green measures, it will actually pay off financially, because at the end of the day, a lot of these awareness creation and education, once it doesn't translate into financial gains, you don't really get the attention of people. So I think that's where the energy and the efforts should be a bit more concentrated in changing the mindset of people towards green and sustainable buildings. That at the end of the day, there definitely will be financial gains in the long run, and even to your personal well-being and wellness, it's a win-win for everybody.
Great, thank you. Nadine?
I also think that it needs more awareness and more knowledge about green buildings, and also that green building doesn't mean that it's expensive and certified and fancy, but that it can also be just passive design, like for example the HRDC project, like local reused materials, yeah, and that it doesn't have to be expensive.
Great, thank you. Kagiso?
I think that in the African context, we need to think outside the box. And I want to have the pun and say we need to think outside the building, and understand that our governments are concerned with a whole lot of other social issues. And I think we need to drive the nexus between green buildings and social issues that speak to Africa. So I've seen publications like the nexus between green buildings and global health. And so on a local level, in an African context, if we kind of draw in the nexus and reach out to the elements that our contexts are really concerned about and highlight how green buildings address those issues and speak to those issues, I think we can get the attention that we need, particularly from government. Thank you.
Great, I love that. Felix?
Yeah, maybe just to say that green building is not the same as certification. Certification is very often a greenwashing exercise or a post-design sort of, value engineering exercise. What I'm in favor of is simple, low-tech, common sense design decisions that are being taken right at the beginning. And those will be different for every country and every climate and every set of materials that are available, but I think the logic applies everywhere. Understand climate smart design and utilize it right at concept stage, and then I think it is cheaper and easier to generate green buildings than using technology and trying to quantify all sorts of things that could have been avoided with some very basic design decisions at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree. Great, thanks guys. The time went by so quickly, so it's unfortunately we don't have more time to have a discussion. Shinadam, I do see your hand, but I can't open the mic anymore. But guys, reach out to these speakers on LinkedIn. We shared the links and find out more through them if you want to have more questions and answers from them. So with that, can we just give them a really big thank you and an applause for being here and spending time with us and sharing what's happening. I think we should definitely keep each other in touch and let sharing what's happening in every space. So thank you guys. I really appreciate your time and efforts to be here. Really enjoyed to hear from you guys what's happening there. I'm not going to go through all of this. Thanks again, and looking forward. I did share our next webinar is going to be about timber. So yeah, sign up for that, and I'll see you next month. Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good evening.